Hello and welcome to our second video in the fraction series, and in this lesson we'll be looking at today how to compare and to order fractions. So if you recall from our last lesson, we looked more specifically at how to represent fractions. So this could be simple fractions and in the sense of how to represent them in diagrams. So for example, how to represent an amount that is shaded on a diagram. So it could be a square split into four, and I could ask you to tell me how many parts of that square divided into four is shaded. What fraction is represented in that diagram? We also looked at how to find fractions of whole amounts. So this could be half of 18, half of 26, 3/4 of 24. This is finding fractions of whole amounts. And then we looked at equivalent fractions. So this is basically finding fractions which are the same or equivalent to another fraction, and this could be done through either division, or multiplying. So dividing through lowest common factors, if I remember, and lowest common multiples of the number. So that was how we found equivalent fractions. And all of what we have learned in the last lesson will be useful for what we're going to do today in this session, which is knowing how to compare and order fractions. So just to recap from our last session, I have a few questions that I'd like for you to answer and have a go. So the first question is to find out what fraction is represented in each of the diagrams. So you've got 1, 2, 3 diagrams. So if we have a look, well, I'd like you to pause the video actually, and then we'll have a look at the diagrams together. So I assume you've paused the video and you've had a go. So if we look at the first diagram, now if you remember, a fraction has two numbers, a numerator and denominator. The numerator is the top number, and that tells us how many parts of the whole are shaded. And the bottom number is our denominator, and this tells us how many parts of the whole there are altogether. So if we look at the first diagram, we can see there are how many parts shaded of the whole? 1, 2. So our numerator is 2. And our denominator, if you remember, is how many parts make up the whole altogether. And that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So our denominator is 4. So the fraction shown in this diagram represented is 2/4. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment underneath this video, and I'll be happy to help you with any questions you have in regards to this topic of fractions. Okay, so the second diagram, so we need to look at how many parts are shaded. This will be our numerator. So there are 1, 2, 3, which means 3 is our numerator. This is how many parts are shaded from the whole. And our denominator would be how many parts altogether make up the whole. which includes both shaded and non-shaded parts. So if we count, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's 7 parts altogether. So the fraction shown in this diagram represented is 3/7. Okay, so the final diagram is, okay, so our first step is to look for how many parts are shaded. So if we count how many are shaded, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So which means our numerator would be 4 in this case. So how do we find our denominator? So we count how many parts there are altogether which make up the whole, which includes both shaded and non-shaded parts. So if we count altogether, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which then means our denominator is 8. So just to recap again, if we wanted to find any fraction shown in a diagram represented, we count how many parts are shaded in the diagram, which gives us our numerator, and from there we count how many parts make up the whole together, which then gives us our denominator. So that would be how to find fractions represented in diagrams. Hopefully that makes sense. So moving on, the next question in our recap is to find half of 18 and 3/4 of 36. Now again, you can pause the video and have a go, but if you'd like me to go through it, we can go through it once you are ready to progress. So now, assuming you have paused the video and have had a go, we can go through each of the questions together. So if we look at the first question, we have half of 18. So if we remember, if we want to find a fraction of a whole amount, the steps we need to do are, we first need to divide the whole amount by the denominator, and from there we then multiply that answer by the numerator. So whenever you want to find a fraction of a whole amount, the steps are very simple. All you need to do is to divide the whole amount by the denominator that you're given, and then the answer from that result, you multiply that by the numerator. Now in this case it's very simple, because in this question it's quite straightforward because our numerator is 1. So initially all we have to do is to just divide by the denominator and we have our answer. But because the numerator is 1, so we don't actually have to do much for this question. We just divide by the denominator. So all we do is do 18 divided by 2, which is 9, of course. So And obviously 9 times 1 is 9, which is why I said all we have to do is just divide by the denominator in a case like this. So whenever a fraction, if you're given a fraction which has numerator of 1, you just divide by the denominator, which is fairly straightforward. So half of 18, we just do 18 divided by 2, which gives us 9, which is our answer. Now, moving on to the second question, we have 3/4 of 36. Now, this is a bit more trickier because our fraction does not have numerator 1. It has numerator 3. So we have a bit more work to do in this case, but we will get through it. So if you remember, when you have a fraction of a whole amount, you divide the whole amount by the denominator, and then the answer you get from dividing the whole amount by the denominator, you then multiply that by the numerator. So using that to answer this question, if we wanted to find 3/4 of 36, how we would do that is, okay, so we do 36 divided by 4. So 36 divided by 4 is 9. So from there, we then multiply 9 by the numerator, which is in this case 3. So we do 9 times multiplied by 3, which is 27. So 3/4, our answer will be 27. So 3/4 of 36 would be 27. So again, to recap, to find fractions of whole amounts, we divide the whole amount by the denominator, and that result we then multiply that by the numerator. And in the case of if your fraction has numerator 1, we just divide our whole amount by the denominator to get our answer. Like in this case here, where our fraction was a half, we just had to divide 18 by 2, and that was how we got our answer. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, if you do have questions, please feel free to leave a comment below, and I'll happily get back to you with the support you need. Okay, we have one more question, and it is to find equivalent fractions for each of the following using division. So just turn this off. So we have 6/9, 10/25, and 24/32. So if we just tackle each one, or actually you can pause the video, and once you've had a go, we'll look at each one step by step. Okay, so let's have a look at each one individually. So if we want to find equivalent fractions using division, what we have to do is to find highest common factor of the numerator and denominator, so, or HCF for short. So if we look at the first fraction, we have 6/9. So if we wanted to find the highest common factor, if we look at both 6 and 9, if we list the factors of 6 and 9, there's 1, 2, 3, and of course 6 itself. And if you look at 9, we have 1, 3, and 9. So if we compare, if we look closely at both the factors for 6 and 9, we can see that 3 is the only number which is common in both lists of factors for 6 and 9, and is the highest factor which is common among 6 and 9. So, which then means our HCF, or highest common factor, is 3. So from there, all we do is 6/9, and because our highest common factor is 3, we divide both numerator and denominator by 3, which is our highest common factor. So, sorry, what's going on here? So that's 9 divided by 3 is 3, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. So the equivalent fraction using division for 6/9 would be 2/3. So that would be the answer for that fraction. Now I'm just going to quickly go through the last two so we can move on to today's main topic of the lesson. So this one we have 10/25. So our highest common factor would be, in this case, 5. So our HCF is 5. So we divide both numerator and denominator by 5. So we do 25 divided by 5, which is 5, and 10 divided by 5, which is 2. So our answer is 2/5. 2/5 is equivalent to 10/25. And the last one, 24/32. Our highest common factor would be 8, because 8 divides both into 24 and 32 with no remainders, and it is the highest number which divides completely into both numbers. So again, using the same logic, we do 24/32, and then we divide by 8, which gives us 4, and then 24 divided by 8 is 3. So 24/32 is equivalent to 3/4, and 3/4 is also equivalent to 24/32. Again, if you have any questions, leave a comment below the video and I'll be happy to help regarding any questions on the recap questions. So, Our topic for today was comparing and ordering fractions. So, let's see. Our learning objectives are to compare and order fractions with the same denominator, and to compare and order fractions with different denominators using equivalent fractions. So we're first going to look at how to order fractions with the same denominator, which is fairly straightforward. So to order fractions with the same denominator, we order the numerators of each fraction from smallest to largest in ascending order. So we've got an example here to help explain things a bit better. So we've got 3 fractions, 3/9, 2/9, and 7/9. Okay. So if we wanted to order these fractions from smallest to largest, we would look at, because the denominators are all the same, they all have the same denominator of 9, we just need to look at the numerators of each of the fractions and order those in ascending order from smallest to largest. So if we look at the numbers, we have 3, 2, and 7. Which out of these 3 is the smallest? 2. 2 is the smallest, which means 2/9 will be the smallest fraction. Which is the next smallest? So 2 is now used, so we only have between 3 and 7. So between 3 and 7, which is the next smallest? Well, it's 3, which means our next smallest fraction is 3/9, which then leaves us with 7/9 as the largest fraction. So all we do, if we have fractions with the same denominator and we were asked to order them, all we do is look at the numerators and order those from smallest to largest, and then use that to order the fractions from smallest to largest, which is what we've done over here. So again, just going through what we've just done, the smallest numerator is 2, so the smallest fraction is 2/9. The next smallest numerator is 3, so the next smallest fraction is 3/9, which of course leaves us with 7/9 as the largest fraction, which is what we've done here over on this side. So you can see, fairly straightforward. But where the real work comes in is when we have fractions with different denominators. So when ordering fractions with different denominators, we need to find the lowest common denominator for each of the fractions. Okay, so this is where I said what we learned in the last session of finding lowest common denominators and equivalent fractions will come in. You will see why as we move on through the example. So we've got 3 fractions. We've got 3/4, 3/4, 5/8, and a half, or 1/2. So when dealing with fractions with different denominators, we find the lowest common denominator for each of the fractions. So if you can see, our denominators are 4, 8, and 2. So if we wanted to find the lowest common multiple of 4, 8 and 2, the lowest common multiple, well, if we just did a list of all the multiples of 4, 8 and 2, i.e. listing out the 4, 8 and 2 times table. So if we just wanted to check what the lowest common multiples are, so we have 4, 8, 2, and so this is the 4 times table, 8 times table, 2 times table. So 8 times table, 4, 8, 16, 4, 12, 24, and 8. And if you have a close look, you can see that we didn't even have to go far along in our list to see that the lowest common multiple of 4, 8, and 2 is 8. Why? Because 8 is both a multiple of 4, 8, and 2, i.e. it is in the 4 times table, 8 times table, and 2 times table, and it's a common, and it's the lowest number, which is a multiple of all 3 numbers, which is why it is our LCM, or lowest common multiple. So again, just to recap, the reason why it's 8 is because 8 is in the 4 times table, 8 times table, and 2 times table, and also it is the smallest number or lowest number, which is a common multiple of all 3 numbers. So now we have our lowest common multiple, or LCM, of 8. We convert each fraction into another fraction with that multiple. So which is where what we done in the last lesson, equivalent fractions, will come in. So let's have a look at 3/4. So 3/4 is our first fraction, and we need to convert that into an equivalent fraction with denominator of 8. So if we do this, we need to look at what we have done to the denominator to get from 4 to 8 to find our equivalent fraction. So what operation have we done from 4 to get to 8? What have we multiplied or divided by to get from 4 to 8? So we have multiplied in this case by 2. So if you remember from our last lesson, when finding equivalent fractions, anything you do to the denominator, you must do to the numerator. So that means, because we have multiplied by 2, we multiply by 2 to our numerator. So 3 times 2 is 6. So our fraction 3/4 is equivalent to 6/8, which is what I've also done here, just to make things clearer. And our other fraction was 1/2. 1/2 sorry, that's very messy. 1/2 um so from 2 to 8, what do we multiply or divide by? So we multiply by 4 because 2 times 4 is 8, which means we do 1 times 4, which is 4. So 1/2 is equivalent to 4/8. Again, I've just done it on the slides just to make things clearer. So from the last slide, we discovered that 3/4 is equivalent to 6/8, and 1/2 is equivalent to 4/8. But then you may ask, why did we not work with this second fraction, 5/8? Well, because the fraction is already has denominator of 8, we don't have to convert it to a fraction of denominator 8 because it is already a fraction with denominator 8. So we don't have to do any further work to that fraction to get it to be in the state we need it in to order the fractions. So we only had to convert 2 of the fractions into denominators of fractions with denominators of 8. So let's have a look. So instead we could order the fractions 6/8, which is our 3/4. So instead we could order the fractions 6/8, which is where the 3/4 comes from, 5/8, which is our second fraction, but remember, because we already had the fraction with denominator 8, we don't have to do any further work to that fraction, any further simplifying or multiplying to get it into a fraction of denominator 8, as it was already in the form we need it in. And 4/8, which is our half. So we are essentially ordering these fractions. And because they all have the same denominator, we can order them very easily just by looking at the numerators and ordering them from smallest to largest. Okay, so just to give you a reminder, this is our 3/4. This is the same, so it's 5/8, and this is 1/2. So if we wanted to order it now, we could say, okay, which number is the smallest out of 6, 5, and 4? Well, it's 4/8. So 4/8 is the first smallest. Our second smallest would be, again, 5, because 5 is the next smallest in our fractions. And which means 6/8 is the largest fraction. So that then leaves us with, so let's just rub this off. So again, just to recap, so the first fraction is 4 over 8 is the smallest. Second smallest is 5 over 8. And the largest is 6 over 8. So in ascending order, we have 1/2, which is 4 over 8. 1/2, 4 over 8. Second smallest, 5 over 8. And third smallest is 3/4 or 6 over 8. Hopefully that should make sense. And that is how you would order fractions with different denominators. Now your turn to have your chance to have a go at some questions. So I think what we'll do, because of time, we will go through the first question only, and then in the next lesson we will go through question 2 as a recap, because we don't want to make the video so long. So if we have a look at the first question, which is to order the fractions from smallest to largest. So here are our fractions. Now, what do you notice about all these fractions? They all have the same denominator, and our denominator is 15. So what we do is we have a look at each of our numerators and order them in ascending order, i.e. from smallest to largest. And then that would be how we would order these fractions from smallest to largest. So if we look at the numbers, which of these is the smallest? And you can see it's 4. So our first smallest is 4 over 15. Okay, we've used this fraction, so we're now left with 3. So out of 14, 11 and 6, which is the next smallest? 6 over 15, because 6, it goes 4, then 6, so it will be 6 over 15. Use this fraction. Okay, so the next smallest out of 14 and 11 would be 11 over 15. So it will be 11 over 15 is our third next smallest, which then leaves us with 14 over 15 as our largest fraction. So smallest is 4 over 15. The smallest is 4 over 15. The next smallest is 6, because 4 is the smallest number, which makes this fraction the smallest. Then 6 is the next smallest, so 6 will be our next smallest. Then we have 11, our third smallest, 11 over 15, and our largest is 14, so 14 over 15 is our largest fraction. And that is how you would answer that question or solve that problem. So the second question, we will leave till the next lesson to work on as a recap. and hopefully by then you have had a go at some questions of your own to help you understand better. And the more you practice, the more you will be more confident with these type of questions. So just a quick overview, we have looked at how to compare and order fractions with the same denominator, and how to also compare fractions with different denominators. So again, both require some practice if you are fairly new to the topic, but again, with these type of things requires practice and time, and the more you do practice such questions, the easier it will eventually become. So that was today's lesson, and in the next lesson we will be looking at how to add and subtract fractions. So adding fractions with the same denominator and subtracting, and also fractions that have different denominators, adding and subtracting them. So that was today's lesson. I hope it was helpful, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye.